Okay, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna try it again, and I really hope that the sound is okay. My name is Margriet Schavemaker. I'm a curator here in the Stedelijk Museum. We're now here above the stairs on the old part of the building where you can see the first works of the Tinguely exhibition. And this is how most people know Tinguely, the Swiss kinetic artist that produced work between the 50s and his death in 91. This is cheerful, this is funny work, it moves, it's absurd. But once I started studying his work here for this exhibition, I found out that he's so much more than that. He's also very conceptual, performative, he has a fascination for destruction and death. He's very critical towards institutions, towards museums, but also towards society at large. And I hope that in this show I have managed to show all these different aspects of Tinguely. In this short lunch tour, and I really hope that you bear with us and you're still there, I'm gonna give an introduction to the first couple of spaces. And I of course hope that you have seen the show already or will come to see the show. You can also get a free audio tour, which I'm really proud of. In the first space, which is an introductory space, I put up here several screens with documentary footage. Once I started doing research, I found so many documentaries which have been filming in his studio. He was a maniac. He was always at work, working with rubbish, with all kinds of stuff to put his machines together. But how did it all start this way? Why did he start working with movement in the first place? I put down a quote here. It's nice if you can perhaps walk with me here. It shows so well why in the 50s he started to work with other material than just paint. He says here, I painted and painted. I never managed to finish a picture. It was like I was paralyzed and became stuck. I just couldn't see the end and didn't know when I was meant to stop. So I started working with movement. Movement offered me a way out of this paralysis, offered an endpoint. Movement allowed me to say, okay, the work is done. And I think that is really nice because it shows so much how he is in the 50s living in a different age. An age where machines are there, films is there, television is sort of getting there. And you cannot just do this static work anymore. In the first space, which is devoted to the work of the late 50s, you see very well how he first started to work with masters that preceded him. So abstract artists like Paul Klee or Malevich, who had worked in the years 10 and 20s, and he returned to them. He really admired the work, but he put it into motion. So what he did is, you can see here also in the space, he made these works again, and sort of copies in a way, but in a completely different way with little motors at the back. And then the idea is that the audience can push a button, which I in this space actually have gotten rid of, because most of these works are so super fragile that they allow only a couple of times a movement. So we have to wait. We're now hoping that this one will play and that one over there, because these are the ones that are allowed a lot of time to run. Let's see if it's not running. We can also, of course, look at other works. Yeah, this one is now running. Meta Malevich, which is of course nice because we have Malevich in our own collection at the Stedelijk Museum. And there's another one running. These are of course super fragile. This was an early phase, and right now collectors that have this in the collection are of course very careful with them. So many of these works can only run for like every 5 minutes, some even only every half an hour. So you can see that although first we had a little hiccup in the sound, you're now treated to these beautiful works. The idea is that they're never ending, so that the composition is always changing. In that sense, it's a motion that never stops. And in that sense also a critique on traditional artisthood and the artist that makes a perfect work very well composed. Here the composition is left to chance. Now I want to go to the next room. Because the criticality that I just mentioned on this artistic idea that, is also displayed in various other works of the late 50s and early 60s. In the second space you can see, for instance, here is big drawing machines. And if we take a closer look, the first one here, which is fantastic, I think, these machines draw abstract images that, of course, at that time in the 50s and 60s were very important. Was the name of the game at that time. But letting a machine produce them, who is then the author of the work? Is the machine the author? Is Tinguely the author? Or the person that paid a coin to make such a drawing? So in that sense also, again, very critical on what classical conventional art was about. Do-it-yourself was a term that he used often, and I think that for the late 50s and early 60s is amazing. My favorite vitrine is over here. It's in 1960 he had an exhibition in Germany, in Krefeld, and the catalogue then consists of instructions to make your own metamallevi. So the work we just saw, you can see here again, but it's a copy, it's a fake. But he wanted people to produce them, so he put down all kinds of drawings, construction drawings, pages and pages full of instructions what kind of material you would need. And in the end, if you make one here, that's very nice where you zoom on now, there is a certificate, and if you get a photo of your own new piece and the certificate and send it to Tinguely in those days, he would sign it, and then you would have an original Tinguely in your possession, which is of course very, very modern, if you say that. It's about co-creation, it's about allowing the audience to participate in the production of your own artistic oeuvre. So I think it's quite radical and very, very topical. The same radicality you find here on the wall, a photograph that he produced, and it was in Germany, in Düsseldorf. He had an exhibition there, and he has written this manifest called For Statics, which of course is quite difficult if you think that his work is about kinetics. But what he means by that is that everything in the world moves, so that is the only thing static. So if you embrace that, so if you are for statics, it means that you embrace movement. He says now here, or he displays himself distributing these pamphlets over the city of Düsseldorf from an airplane, but it never happened, it's just staged. So I think that's from this day and age in which we continuously perform and present ourselves through selfies. This was also quite a smart way to draw attention to his ideas. It got all dispersed all over the media, so he knew how to play with that. The same is true for how he presents his drawing machines that you just saw, also out in the streets in Paris. And in another room that I will discuss now is the 4 big installations that he produced that exploded, so self-destructive installations. They were meant, also a critical value was in there, they were meant to leave no leftovers. So collectors, museums could not acquire anything of it. It was just an ephemeral thing happening once. But the 4 films that remained of these self-exploding works are amazing. And I placed them in the next room, which we walk to right now. So on the big projection, in the end, you see all the 4 right after another, the explosions. But on the other screens that hang here, you can see the longer documentaries. The first one that is appearing here is the Homage to New York, that was in the garden of the MoMA, and that was in 1960. Then after that follows on a small black and white screen a second one called Study for the End of the World, Part 1, which was in the Louisiana Museum in Denmark, which is amazing. So this machine explodes and a pigeon died in it. So the news was all over it, because still, that's of course today still, artists cannot kill animals for their work. But his answer was that the pigeon had already, or the dove I should say, the dove was already dead in advance. It had a cardiac arrest, he says, so it was not his fault. I think the most wonderful film is the 3rd explosion he did in the Nevada desert. A 26-minute long documentary was made of that, together with his, at that time, partner, Nicky de Saint-Phal. And the the thing you see here now is that it partly is not working, the whole explosion. And then he gets an interview question and he says, is asked, hey, things are not happening as you planned. And then Tinguely says, well, you can't expect the world to end the way you like it or you've planned it. Yeah, I totally like this film, and I'm really happy with the design of this room by Bas van Tol, because it feels like you're immersed inside these self-explosive installations. The last one in the end, the small screen, is, if we can walk up there, it's very funny as well. It's 10 years later in Milan. It was a celebration of 10 years of Nouveau Realist, the artistic group or network that Tinguely belonged to. And in Milan there, they said nothing to the officials there. So it's just like, we want to reveal this monument, and oh fine, they said. And then it appeared that in the end it was this huge golden phallus, and it ejaculated fire and fireworks. And of course, after that, nobody wanted to know anything about it. Whereas the other works have been prominently covered in the media. Walt Disney was interested in doing a thing with Tinguely, but the Italians, this particular work, it was not, of course, considered to be politically correct. I think that it's now time to sort of end this first introduction. I just want to give you a glimpse of the other rooms, and I hope you will join us the next time, because then I will cover some other spaces here in the exhibition. Thank you so much for being here.